Well, hello everybody, and thanks for joining the CI/CD strategy overview. Glad you're able to make it. We wanted to schedule this meeting to have another chance to present this content and talk about it. The product managers and me had produced all of this maybe a month and a half ago, maybe even 2 months ago now. And then we went through an exercise where we presented to the leadership group, got a bunch of feedback, and then have integrated that all for the most part here into this document. So it's pretty accurate. It's pretty forward-looking in terms of where we're headed, and it's got a lot of great information in it. Hopefully, everybody's had a chance to review it who's participating in this meeting. But for anybody who's going to watch this on Unfiltered later, I'm just going to share my screen and walk us through the page. And of course, my trackpad just died at this moment, but that's okay. I got a backup. Okay. Can everybody see the product section vision?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what this page is it actually has the content integrated from all of the individual stages and everything as well. And it just gives one really, really nice overview of CI/CD. Not all of the section pages are going to be organized in this way, but within CI/CD, we sort of have a unique positioning where CI/CD is really tightly integrated, and people in the market tend to think about it as CI/CD and talk about it in that way. So for us, it makes sense to have everything sort of well integrated here. We kick things off in the document by showing this infographic that shows how the different stages and categories relate to each other within CI/CD. We've got verify, which covers build pipelines, release, which covers delivery pipelines, and then package, which stores the intermediary artifacts, anything from like actually binaries that are built to container images and things like that. And that sort of is the glue between these two. We talk a little bit about the market size here, our competitive space overall in the market and how we're seeing ourselves there. And then the themes are what we go into next. Or sorry, the making continuous delivery real section is where we talk about how, for us, the traditional principles, I guess you could call them traditional for CI/CD, that have come out of the continuous delivery book, which is honestly the one that I started my whole career on, are still very, very relevant. We do have this idea of progressive delivery, which is taking those concepts and accelerating them and sort of reinventing them, at least to a certain extent, if not in principle, in terms of what's possible for the Kubernetes and incremental rollout, continuous delivery kind of world that we're in now. Some challenges and opportunities overall for CI/CD for GitLab, and then a strategy that we touch on, how we want to build a integrated workflow for continuous integration that actually has all of the data that you need in whatever role you're in that are engaging with the CI/CD process, all in one place and all visible. This is more for anybody who's just going to be watching this online. I know you've all read this, but so I'm trying to go relatively quick while still getting the content across. The next most important section here is the plan and themes section. And what we've done here is broken out the things that we're doing, and what you'll find in each of these is epics that talk about actually delivering things that are relevant to these into a few different categories. Single application CI/CD, so this is tying everything together and just having it be one place where you can achieve continuous delivery, progressive delivery, and beyond. Multi-platform support, so focusing on how we're going to have Windows shared runners, Mac shared runners, but also more architectures like ARM, maybe even different sized Linux runners, different sized runners available as well for Linux, Windows, Mac, and just giving a lot of flexibility to the platforms that are available to you. Speedy, reliable pipelines. So this is all about pipeline performance and how long it takes to get a runner, how quickly that runner can set itself up, how fast the registry is, these sorts of things. Doing powerful things easily and quickly is probably another word that could be added to this, is all about onboarding and just being able to do powerful things using GitLab in a really clear way. It's one of the things that I think is really, really great about our solution overall. And we want to just continue investing in that, improving auto DevOps, improving things like, editing of the GitLab CI YAML, and making it just easy to get up and running and do powerful things with minimum amount of work. So it almost feels like you're doing magic. Progressive delivery, I touched on a bit. These items support that. Mobile is an area that we're looking at prioritizing and making sure that we're building a really, really great solution for doing mobile development and CI/CD. So publishing to things like app stores is part of that. And also getting Windows runners is part of that as well. Excuse me. Then thinking about compliance, how we're collecting evidence and tying everything together in the delivery process is going to be really, really powerful and take advantage of our single application in the sense that you're not having to pull in data like if you're using a bunch of different tools to try and get the picture of what's happening from an audit perspective in your releases. It's all going to be right there available to you in GitLab, collected as it goes without any management or oversight on that. This is a really exciting area as well. Talk a little bit about things that we're not doing, and then the stages and categories within this area. So we've got Verify, which has its own strategy and is going to be all about, yeah, well, I guess there's a ton of things in each of these that I'm not going to dive into, but within testing, we've got like AI and ML. There's just a lot of really, really interesting things. Child-parent pipelines is another one to check out that's coming up very soon. That's really going to make GitLab much more powerful. Each of these categories under here has its own strategy page. And then we go on to package, which has its own strategy. And then the individual categories have strategy pages as well. Release has the same thing. And then finally, we have what's next. And you can browse in here to see what's coming up in all of the different releases that we have out through the beginning of next year. So that's the page. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read it. I'd like to go ahead and switch over to questions now. And we'll start with the first one on the agenda here. Dan, it looks like that's yours.
Oh, hey, Jason. Thanks very much for putting all this together. This is great. I think it's awesome to have a chance to talk about our strategy. So I really appreciate it. Question is, we don't mention market share package stage at all in this handbook page. Do we have that data, or is that available at all?
Yeah, we don't. In fact, so a lot of the market analysis that happens out there is kind of like on the CI/CD market, and they break it down in a few different ways, but not ones that really align to the way that we do stages here. We can look at those numbers together. I think you can kind of read the tea leaves and see certain patterns in there, but not a number that we could be really comfortable with in saying like the market opportunity for packaging software is X, because we're really not directly applicable or comparable to, Artifactory, because we're not exactly trying to build an Artifactory clone. We're building something a little different. So it's complex, but we do have some numbers, but not ones that really just kind of are like, oh yeah, that's the market size for package.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
And Jason, I can chime in with one other. A lot of times we'll pull TAM data, total addressable market, from analyst reports or analyst research, and the package space is not covered as thoroughly. So kind of like Jason was saying, I think we could derive some numbers by reading the tea leaves or pulling some numbers together. We might be able to do that as a project, and I'll open an issue.
Thanks for that, William. That's great. Dan, next question is yours also.
Thanks for that. Sorry, I'm just trying to take notes in here as well so that a good representation of our conversation. Yeah, I was just saying, I sort of tried to catch up on this last night. There's a lot to take in at once. Yeah, I'm wondering if more focused conversations around our strategy could be useful. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I saw your question earlier, and I think that that's a great idea. I think probably having each of the product managers for each of the stages present something that people could come and really do a deep dive in would be great. It's a really, really great idea, and I'll take an action to talk to the product managers about getting that set up.
Yeah, I think I would sort of attribute a little bit of this to our Think Big meetings that Package is doing, that Tim and Ian have put together. I don't know if that'd be helpful for other people, but I could certainly see this type of thing coming up. So maybe that'd be a suggestion too. I guess I front loaded all my questions. Sorry, I got to them last night when I was reading through.
No worries, yeah.
I'm
you got the ball rolling, so thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries, sorry. So I'm seeing potential for integration across our various stages. Should we look at these opportunities circumstantially, i.e., when they come up, and I did have an example in here as well, or sort of proactively start looking for opportunities to actually share effort across our stages? I did sort of follow up with some more information, but I don't know if you want to just answer that before I start talking more.
Sure. Yeah, so we're starting next year's planning for how the organization is going to be structured. And one of the things that I'm looking at that's my highest priority is building out a team that can look at workflows and tie these things together. So I'm not exactly sure how this will work. It's not been approved yet, but I'm hopeful and pretty confident that we're heading in this direction, that we will have a team that's not working on package features or verify features or release features, but like, how do you go to import a project, get it deployed to the container registry, and then onto AWS? And they'll be looking at that flow in its entirety. And I think that will be huge for us because some of those things we're all one product and it's all the single application, but sometimes there are these little gaps and stepping points. AutoDevOps does a great job in a lot of cases for tying them together. Like I did a walkthrough recently where, I imported a project, made a little container, and it automatically deployed it to the container register for me. So it was like a little magic in that way. But yeah, doing more of that is a super high priority.
Yeah, we've certainly had a few of those ideas come up in some of our Think Big meetings where we've sort of said, it'd be so cool to have this integrated more with the pipeline and the display to make it more coherent and a more enjoyable process for our customers. So
yeah,
sorry.
There is an issue that's titled something like, onboarding. Well, what was difficult when you first joined? I can't remember what it's called. I shared it in company announcements recently. That would be great to talk about those kind of first user flows in there, and definitely ones that bridge the gap between different stages within CI/CD, or even beyond, honestly. Some of the things that we're looking at are AutoDevOps, which is outside of our area, or setup of Kubernetes, which is outside of our area, but that's all important for those first user workflows.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I had an extra comment here, but Brianna had a comment here in this issue. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So on the integration side, we have at least 3 different efforts, for example, for UX strategy, for CI/CD, so for release, verify, and package. So that's definitely a concern for us as designers and product designers to understand the overlap of the functionalities and to see how we can better integrate what we're building, what we're designing, and also what we're researching. So that's as a suggestion, and I think then I'll also touch base on that for us to look into the UX vision as a group as a whole, or not separately. So I think that would also be super valuable to us together with the product manager.
Yeah, I totally agree. Nadia, not to put you on the spot, but maybe that's something you and I can work on and talk about how we can get some interesting flows going there.
Yeah, I think, Hayana, that's a perfect point. And that's kind of like related to some of the questions that I wanted to ask later on. And I think that's a good idea to work on this together.
Cool. And I think I have the next question if no one has any other comments there. GitHub's recently made a couple of large announcements in our section. It seems this is like GitHub's change of strategy to start like being more of a single point for people's DevOps needs. I mean, they're copying us, that's okay. But I guess one of my question is that was in package and CI, and I'm wondering like how we look at trying to compete with a competitor like that that's well funded and has presumably a heap of people working on these specific things. And I could call out just particularly with the package managers in the package stage. It's difficult to keep up with that pace. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that in terms of that being a competitor.
Yeah, off the top of my head, there's 2, I think, main areas there that we need to focus on. One is hiring. So for next year, I think we need to grow probably another package team and just be able to do more ourselves. But the other really, really important part for package is to get to the point where the package integrations can be contributed, and having a really strong set of guidance, having a really strong base functionality that's there and can be just kind of cloned out. we'll start getting contributions and be able to really take advantage of our open source nature and get yeah, just a lot of great stuff from people out there. And I think that that's how we're going to be able to compete.
Yeah, I think we do have a number of community contributions, and we are working through with those people, and we do have an existing effort to provide some clear documentation on how to do that better, and that's something that Steve's already been working on as part of his effort to build out those first new ones that we've started putting together. So yeah, I feel like that's good value in that particular area. And as far as hiring and splitting teams into, you know, more focused around certain categories, certainly we're going to keep hiring, so that's super important. So yeah, that's a fun challenge. So thank you for that, Jason.
Yeah, of course. Looks like Nadia, over to you.
Yeah, I think I'm the next one. So I'm curious, how are we making sure that that we are building the right or the solutions that our customers want today? I'm curious, like, what are the efforts that we are doing? How user research is involved? Maybe we do market analysis. You know, what are the frameworks that we're using today?
Yeah, I think there's a today version and a tomorrow version. What we're doing today is sort of relying on the expertise of the team that we have today, working together to work on the issues and, you know, kind of make smart decisions. And what I like to consider our superpower, which is that all of our issues are public, and customers, users can all participate, and we can get these really great active conversations going where we come up with really, really brilliant ideas because we're including customers directly in the planning process, and everything is transparent and nothing is hidden. We never end up in that situation where we've worked on something for 3 months that we kind of internally thought was a good idea, but then kind of falls flat when it hits the market. So that's how we're doing it today. In the future, we've got this, yeah.
Sorry, question about that. And where can we track that? Sorry, I'm like my third week, so trying to figure out where like, the good places to look into that. I'm curious how active are customers in like commenting or like share their opinions.
It depends on the issue, but in most cases, they're super, super active. And the issues that we're working on are the kinds of issues that have a lot of traffic. So it's really in the implementation issues where this is happening. Gotcha. So like in 12.6, 12.7 right now, I'm covering on an interim basis the role for CI, the PM role for CI. So I'm in conversations with customers and Dimitri, who's my UX designer, and a couple key engineers, like in some cases Camille, in some cases Fabio. These are the folks that I tend to work with on my team. And we're having early discussions that involve customers in those issues. And so by the time we get to 12.6, we will, or by the time we get to actually delivering that release, we will have had some of these conversations and come up with at least something that's a little bit battle tested and is more than you're able to do it at other companies, I think. And then in the future, we've got this product development flow process, which we are rolling out, which has the opportunity canvas and has formal customer conversations and UX research built into it, which I think is a whole exciting new way of working. I'm actually going through my first one right now and super impressed with how it's going so far, but I've not quite got through the complete one. I think that this is going to let us still be able to take advantage of the process that we have today on smaller items and things like that. But for when we're really thinking about doing something big or rethinking a feature, we can do a little bit more due diligence and come up with something that's that we're going to be even more sure about because we've done a little bit more formal UX research and discussion.
Awesome. So I guess with this, you're kind of touching on my next question, which is about how do we see user research, especially, as well as user experience and product designers like contributing to the strategy, to the CI/CD, particularly in this case. And so I think today is different from what we see, what we try to do tomorrow, right? Like how you're also describing that. I guess I can see a lot described in the product development flow. I will check that. I'm not sure if that's something I already see. But like, how would you see user research helping you in the future, maybe to define a bit sharper strategy or involve more customers in?
Yeah. For the now state, and the now state will continue in the future for the smaller items. It is sort of ad hoc, and it's through the relationships of the product manager, the designer, and the UX person. We do sort of work together, and we are creating issues, and these things are happening, but it's not quite perfect. in the future, it's much more formal for these bigger items. And definitely check out that product development flow thing. It is totally new, so everybody's learning it right now. But UX, there's very clear steps where the product manager goes to the UX designer and asks for advice based on the opportunity canvas that we produce, and we review it together. And then the UX researcher creates questions, and we go research those together and have customer conversations. And then that comes back, and then we work with the designer to break it down into like prototypes. And then we present those to the product and UX leadership. So this is all super formal. It's all done in the exact same way every time. And that's the vision for how we're all going to be getting in better habits of working together.
I checked this, and actually I've come across this page already, yeah. But yeah, I guess like what Dimitri and Hayana also commenting here, and Ian as well, that yeah, I understand that that's a new process, but it sounds like we can get better there as well, into earlier involvement of the product designers, and yeah, getting a little bit on the same page a bit earlier so we can work closer together. But yeah, so I think this is something for us to discuss also in the future collaboration, how we can get better in this.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Next question is also yours, Nadia.
Yeah, out of my interest, yeah, I'm curious, are we doing any customer churn analysis? So yeah, previously it was a very powerful tool for us to understand why customers are leaving us. Are they leaving to a competition, or they're leaving by some other reason?
So I'll quickly answer this question. Dan made a note that we may have skipped over something, so I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But we do churn analysis, and we have a loss report. You may have seen that posted in the, I think it was in the product channel today. This actually isn't our main area of focus, though. Acquisition is much more, so we have loss reports, we have churn reports, and yeah, I think the most interesting ones for us right now are ones where we lost on a deal, where we had an opportunity to acquire a new customer. And just being out there competing in the market is the most interesting things for us, because we're more in a growth phase, I think, right now than a maintenance phase. So for us, churn is important, and we have to be monitoring that 100% because we have to make sure that we don't develop a problem. But I think for the most part right now, we're in the business of trying to find as many new people to come see our greatness as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, asking because, you know, they say that it's much cheaper and much easier to retain the customer than acquire a new one. So yeah, maybe this.
That's absolutely true, and maybe we should be doing a bit more there. So thank you for raising that. And then Dan, what you mentioned we skipped over something. Can you?
Yeah, we had just that last comment. We had a couple of people, Rihanna and Ian, had made comments. I just wanted to make sure they had an opportunity to verbalize those if they wanted to verbalize them.
Yeah, so my comment on the fact that Nadia already touched base on that is that we need to get better also in communicating the UX research results and also the vision across the department, but also work more closely with the engineering team for that. So one thing I've been experiencing this transitional period where we are adopting the product development workflow is that it's been kind of an isolated effort sometimes from UX or from engineering standpoint. And also once we start collecting this data, like what Ian pointed below, is that we need to find a way to communicate this to other PMs, to other designers. So yeah, that's definitely something to align in the process. And Ian, if you want to continue.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe like a UX newsletter of like interesting things found.
Yeah,
something
we have an issue open to talk about how we want to talk, how we want to collaborate with product manager and counterparts in release. So a suggestion is to have like not a working session, but release or UX CI/CD call, have like group conversations that we can invite people to hear our findings, so that we can share more knowledge that we collected within the group or department. So that's the thing I think will be super helpful for us.
Yeah, makes sense.
Ian, did you want to verbalize that?
Yeah, so my follow-up was Package. I've experienced, maybe uniquely or maybe not, a lot of what they're looking for is not to come to Package and for just it to work. And a lot of the things they're asking for is For example, show in the pipeline screen when a package gets built. That would be really helpful. And I've just kind of experienced it's really a hard lift to try to get that cross-team idea up and moving anywhere, because it kind of feels like, oh, is it my job to, or is it the package job to perpetrate this because it was our research, or like, do we share it or do we hand it off? It's been kind of tricky to navigate that.
Yeah, that can be super, super tricky. A general rule of thumb, though, is that if it's helping your users, then you should feel free to implement it. There isn't a a hard line where, like, if you need something from Verify, then you need to come to Verify and then ask us for resources, and we will get it to you, and then we will ship it, and then you can be dependent on that. You really have the freedom within package to implement it yourself. I do recognize, of course, that sometimes there's expertise challenges, sometimes there's capacity problems, because maybe it's a little bit of a smaller thing and it would be nice if somebody else did it, but you wouldn't necessarily prioritize it yourself, and it can get quite complicated. But I think in those cases, especially, what you're describing sounds like a pretty quick win, just showing an activity in a new place. Reach out to us for help, or I say us, but reach out to the Verify team for help, and let's find a way to get it done. I think wherever it ends up, probably package would make the most sense there. Let's find a way to get it done.
Great, thank you.
I think Dan, over to you now.
Yeah, yes. I was just going to say that doing powerful things easily is a great way to summarize our way to make our solutions in a GitLab-y way. It's certainly something that's been coming up for us in the Think Big conversations of like, okay, but yes, we could just replicate what the system does, but how are our users actually going to be able to interact with this in a way that's engaging and useful to them without exposing them to a bunch of detail? So I'm just, my thought here, and maybe it's not a question, is just sort of how do we sort of proceduralize that a little bit so that we can sort of say, well, this is how we draw that line through this functionality to make it really sort of an experience which is consistent across the board. And I think maybe Ian's example was a great one of, we just showed that the package got built in the pipeline so people can go to their sort of native overview of what happened in the build and see how the package got built. I don't have to check anything because that's what we're seeing. And I think in a general sense, there may be other opportunities like that in other stages for people to sort of say, well, how would GitLab do this? Not what does it actually just do in the system? So thanks for that. Right. It was a great point.
Oh, yeah. And to add to that, I think the UX folks can really help us a ton in identifying those things. But there's also things that we can do on the engineering side. As we're implementing things like keywords in the GitLab CI YAML, making sure that we're not kind of turning that into a programming language or making it so that you need to read the entire page, which is already getting quite long, in order to then start implementing, so we have to be thinking about complexity. There's a really nice video that maybe it was 6 months ago I recorded with Mark and a couple other folks, Mark Punsak, and it's about small primitives, and we're talking about the idea that there's these like small keywords that if you tune them right, they let you do really, really powerful things and don't get in your way. And that really, really does feel like the GitLab way. Like having a bunch of wizards that automatically do things for you and put you on rails, and as long as you're on the happy path and everything works great, is kind of not our way of doing things. We want to make things easy and discoverable, but we want to do it in terms of powerful primitives that people can use to do cool things. And so there's a lot of subtlety that comes into that theme that is, I think it's good to engage with and good to ask questions about, and we can all kind of come to a shared understanding over time of what exactly that means.
Thank you for that.
Nadia, over to you.
Me next, I guess. So you've been going over the page, and actually this is something that I've seen earlier. There is a mobile support section to that. So I'm curious, maybe my fault, never checked, curious what support do we offer for mobile today? And I'm curious, like, do we know what are the use cases that people would use mobile for GitLab?
Yeah, the answer is we sort of know today. I have a personal background in doing like mobile releases at scale. I worked at Electronic Arts where we did something like hundreds of mobile builds and publishing every single day. So I sort of know the problems, and I published a blog post. Again, I think it was about 6 months ago for using Fastlane, which is a nice little tool that can integrate with GitLab CI, and you can get builds, preview environments, and then publishing all set up and work. We also build our own Gitter app, which is has a mobile app, and we build that using GitLab CI. I won't say many, but there are people out there that are using GitLab CI to do mobile builds. Having Mac runners is going to help that, because for OS X builds, you can only build them on a Mac. But I think that the reality is, for the most part, we're really not on people's radar as being a mobile build solution, because we're missing some of the key pieces. You can pull it all together, you can make it work, but we don't make it easy. One of the other things that I want to focus on in the hiring plan for next year, at least, is potentially building a team that's focused on that mobile use case, and is just thinking about the things that mobile developer needs and delivering those, because it's a really great market, and it's a really interesting one, because you're building kind of unique things. You're publishing to app stores instead of to a Kubernetes environment. So they have their own challenges and problems, and it's really, really interesting. And we can bring all of the greatness of the overall GitLab app to those users as well, which I think would be awesome.
Cool. And do we hear any interest from the customers today on that?
Some, when we talk to people about it, they get interested and they get excited. But like I said, if people go out and search for great mobile build applications, GitLab is not really on the radar, even though you can do it. And we just need there's not a ton that we need to do in order to make it great. There's a few things that we can do to help people.
Okay, cool. Dimitri, over to you.
Sorry, I was being asked something here. Let me see. So I was wondering, in terms of theme prioritization, if we have thought about introducing a hierarchy of sorts, to say, hey, in case we have multiple competing items, we can clearly say, because we've dedicated ourselves to a certain hierarchy, that this issue should indeed be prioritized over the other. That's interesting. I think that at least the way we've been thinking about it to now is that these themes are such high-level things delivered across multiple stages that there aren't really prioritization conflicts between them per se, or there isn't a plan to deliver X on this theme by this date in the same way that we manage that for maturity or categories. It's more that the things that we are delivering are relevant to those themes, and then in things like the kickoff, we can talk about those themes and how we're contributing to them. You're probably right, though. I think you're probably predicting what we need to do in the future, because there will come a point where we want to have a more clear target for some of these themes, and maybe have we want to bring this theme to a certain maturity level in this fiscal year. And then at that point, I think probably it does make sense to have them be a hierarchy, or prioritized in some way, or in the same way that we do for the categories. Yeah, so interesting. Thanks for raising that.
Yeah, and I have a comment on that, if I understood the question correctly at the first time, that we're trying to look into it within release. So Audit and I had a conversation, I think, last month about that. And if I got a good sense of what Dimitri was saying. So for example, we are releasing the releases functionality. So now we have, for example, the ability to edit a release item, but we don't have the ability to create it from the UI. So when I think about the themes within a feature of functionality, I'm thinking of what type of functionalities and what type of features that we want to deliver first that will bring more value to the users. But it's been quite a challenge to have these conversations, because we need to go to a higher level and look into the feature as a whole, and see what makes more sense to scope first and to work on the UX research, dev efforts, etc. So I think it will be super valuable if we could jump into talking about the feature vision together with PMs, not just the whole department, so that as product designers we can break down and of course, this will get better once we implement the product development workflow, because that's the idea, right? Write the story and then break down issues together. But that's definitely something under our radar. We just need to get better at having this conversation.
Yeah, nice. That's great to hear. The epics can and probably should already be aligning to themes, and that's kind of how it goes in the other direction. So if you look at the themes, it links down into epics. The next logical step is, having issues in there, and then thinking about those themes, just like we think about, personas as we're designing features. So if we're working on an epic that's part of the do powerful things easily and quickly theme, then maybe that colors it differently and provides us some nice context in how we design it, compared to if it's in the compliance theme or something like that. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, this will also be super valuable for our MVCs, so we can have a bigger, that overview of the product as a whole. That would be awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Looks like we're out of questions in the document. Does anybody have anything else that they want to ask?
Hey, Jason, oops, someone else is adding it. Well, I'll add this to the list later. When I look at what's next, grouped under each of the upcoming releases, are these in rank order? And so the confidence level of the lower ones are less as far as they may be pushed out to a future release?
No, they're in, I think they're grouped by project and then by number. So it's just sort of arbitrary and not really useful in that context. And this actually is a problem that we've been thinking about lately within the product team. So you probably kind of saw it in the kickoff, but all of these pages that, there's actually one generator that's behind all of these pages that have lists of issues like this on our website. So like the kickoff, the upcoming releases page, the GitLab releases page, the direction pages like the one that we're talking about in this meeting. All of them are using the same generator that's issue oriented. But more and more issues are nice to talk about, and a lot of times there's valuable issues, and that is important. But it's the epics that are really interesting, and epics don't appear on that page at all. So you can have a problem like, for example, where you have 4 or 5 little issues that make up an interesting epic. None of them are really necessarily that interesting to talk about on their own, but then nothing shows up on that page because it's really what they add up to in the epic that makes sense. And then the next click up, we also sort of have the same problem where those epics are aligning to themes, and we want to be talking about themes publicly and giving people that context. And then themes don't show up on that page. So I think there's some work to do in how that page is being generated, and maybe reconsidering, including epics, including themes, somehow finding a way to make all of that well integrated, preferably even in the GitLab product itself rather than in an external web page. Those are problems that folks in the plan team are thinking about, and but we don't have a solution quite yet. So those pages tend to be long lists of issues, unfortunately, and you have to be able to put the context together yourself, at least for the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Cool. Well, thanks everybody for the time. Hopefully this was valuable. I'll put the recording up right after this meeting, so you should see it on Unfiltered in the next probably 30 minutes. Yeah, maybe we can do this on some cadence. I'd love to hear your feedback, so let me know, what I could improve, what went well, what could do better, and we'll try it again in another month, maybe. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jason.
Jason.